You just know a game is about to go absolutely crazy when it boots into the config menu instead of the actual exe launching. Her Story is an FMV game, that stands for full motion video, and it's a genre that I normally don't take too close of a look at, but I do remember this one doing quite well when it came out, so I've wanted to check it out for a little bit now. Within the context of the game, we find ourselves sitting in front of a computer screen. This seems to be connected to some sort of police investigation, where we need to search through their database using key phrases to try to sort through all of these different short little video clips that exist on this one woman on this one case. Basically, we will type a word or phrase into the box and then get served all of the video clips where the person being interviewed says that word or phrase. It seems like this is a pretty old investigation, so maybe we're like a new detective that's looking back through all the information, trying to figure things out. We also don't have the detective's footage, we only have the person being interviewed, so we're gonna need to figure things out all on our own. Other than the video database, there's only one thing on this computer. It's this mirror game where you jump back and forth, picking over tiles of red and purple. I just knew there was going to be an achievement related to this, so I tried to win on both colors, but nothing unlocked, so I kind of just gave up and we'll come back later. It's important to note here that I had no idea what the case that we were looking at even was about, so I just went with murder, which is what the recommended in-place search term that the game starts with is. So I decided to click that one, and it turns out that we're seeing videos of a woman talking about a murder that's happened recently, asking the police how she can cooperate, and it seems to be going over the course of a couple of days as we see her in different outfits, and we can see the clock to the top right has different times in it. She also mentions that this is the murder of a man named Simon, so that gives us another key term that we can go ahead and look up. Simon is definitely a great search term, but unfortunately the database is limited. We can only see the first 5 entries of the 61 total that include the name Simon. That's going to make finding information we want a little bit trickier, so we're going to need to figure out some ways to work around that. We do get a little bit more information. It seems like Simon is a pretty rational guy, so he's not the type to run off and do anything out of character that would have led to him being murdered. I also realized at this point that this game actually does have a little bit of a settings menu, and we've been playing with the glare screen on like we were recording a TV monitor, but I decided that for the video anti-glare filter might look a little bit better, so we're going to use that. Through some more sleuthing, we uncovered that Simon and his wife, who we still don't know the name of, appeared to have had an argument on Friday night, and they separated. And pretty much after that, she hasn't seen Simon at all. In fact, no one really has. So what happened to him? A different day's retelling of the events of the argument night and returning to the house ends in our main woman running off to a trash can to throw up, which seems like an interesting detail and something to keep in mind. We bridge into another clip shortly before that vomit clip and find that the woman is talking about being at Simon's parents' house when his mother started talking about when they all lived together and about a baby that we previously didn't know about. She then talks about going down into the basement of the house and noticing that some of the baby's stuff had been misplaced, and when she walks over to investigate that, she notices some very out-of-place bags that of course she opens up and finds a body inside, which seems to heavily imply that Simon was killed by his parents, I guess? Shortly before describing finding the body, the detective also seemed to note that she has a bruise on her face that I couldn't really see in the video, but that also seems like a pretty important thing to note. I promise I'm not doing this on purpose, this is just the way the game is where you're jumping into different story beats out of order. But we go back to her description of the body that she finds, and she says that it looks like his throat had been cut, which is another pretty important thing to note. But she also goes into some weird detail about not seeing his glasses, and he doesn't always need to wear his glasses, but he does have his glasses most of the time, which seems like an unnecessary detail. Eventually, in another video clip, the woman mentions a name finally, Hannah. So it seems like figuring out who Hannah is going to be an important thing that we need to figure out. Searching for Hannah, though, results in a very interesting clip where the same woman seems to be saying that her name is Hannah. I did notice previously in these clips that the woman is wearing several different hairstyles, but now I'm kind of thinking, is this two different people that just look alike? Another Hannah-based search result is a woman that I guess is a different person, asking Hannah why she would be talking about Eve. Now that's another name that we haven't heard before, so that's something to investigate, but then she also puts her head down on the table and begins tapping her fingers in something that seems like Morse code. Another Hannah clip shows that there is a lie detector involved at some point, which seems a little bit weird because we haven't seen this attached at all up till now. The timeline is getting a little bit confusing here. I mostly used the clothes that the women were wearing as the main guide to what was happening when, but we get to an interesting point here where the main woman that we were seeing before says that when Hannah was born, she was born at the same time. Very interesting phrasing. Now that I was looking a lot more closely at the video to try to find differences between two people, I did notice that this woman clearly has a tattoo on her arm. In the majority of the shots, they are wearing a full long sleeve shirt, so it's hard to see if there's a tattoo or not, but there are definitely shots where she doesn't have a tattoo. We also get the reveal that Hannah is pregnant, or was pregnant at one point. We already knew this from previously in the game, but we didn't know which woman we were talking about at that point. The woman in orange has been referencing fairy tales quite a bit in some of the videos that we've seen from her, but in one video clip in particular, she seems to just go through a full explanation of the story of Rapunzel. I can't complain too much though, because that does give us the achievement It's a Happy Ending. Our second achievement also comes from a random video clip where the woman busts out a guitar and does her best Colleen Ballinger in this police interrogation as we earn the achievement A Traditional Ballad. Hannah insisted I not pretend to be her around Simon, and also it suddenly became weird that I slept in the attic. That is some very interesting phrasing that began to make me think that we were dealing with two people sharing one identity, actually. She also randomly starts talking about buying fennel at the supermarket to earn the achievement Have You Ever Eaten Fennel, which seems like a super random achievement, especially considering everything else that's going on. Orange Jacket Woman also recounts that after the big argument with Simon, she got in a crash and drove very far north, and she was so nervous that she ended up getting into a little bit of a car accident with the taxi. But when she mentioned that she was pregnant, the guy calmed down a little bit and brought her to the hospital. So this woman is definitely Hannah because she was pregnant at this point. Okay. It seems weird that she would have left to go so far north after the big argument, but it seems very shortly after that like she was trying to establish she couldn't possibly be the murderer because she was in Glasgow. Oh hey, and we finally get the reveal that Hannah and company used to use a super secret knock signal, like the one that we saw earlier on in the game that seemed like Morse code. We earn our fourth achievement Romantic as one of the women recounts her meeting with some man that resulted in him asking if he could kiss her, which I guess is romantic, as is the name of the achievement. I knew who he was, but he didn't know who I was and was fascinated by the likeness. Those words kinda make me feel like maybe this person met Simon, who was in the relationship with Hannah, and didn't realize that they were trading places and then ran into the other one outside of that context, which is all a little mind warpy, I know. We also get a description that when this character's mother was 8, she fell down the stairs and died. She said it was an accident, which I kind of don't believe, but then she says that at that point, she decided to just leave the house and walk across the street. This kind of solidified my theory that it was two people sharing one identity, but it does definitely leave some pretty big gaping holes. When speaking about the lost baby, Hannah says that they were going to call her Sarah, but then Simon wanted to call her Ava, but she didn't want her baby to have a symmetrical name like she did. And then immediately after that, we get a clip where the other woman says that her mother called her Eve, another symmetrical name. I've been so curious about the tattoo, but I haven't actually just searched for the word tattoo, so finally we get the woman to give a description of it, an apple and a snake. So I guess the woman with the tattoo is Eve, and we earn the achievement expressing my individuality as well. Eve recounts a story where once Hannah got pregnant and moved in with Simon and got married, it became impossible for her to stay with Hannah any longer. It would have been a little bit strange to have an adult woman living in their attic and trying to have Simon not notice that, so they were split up. It seemed like they weren't ready for that, and it seems like Eve got a little bit jealous as she decided to try to get pregnant as well. We flip back to Hannah talking about the day of the big argument with Simon, where she received a present from him, a very nice mirror because he worked in glass and it was her birthday. And apparently this was a very special sort of glass that took a lot of effort to make. But it seems like Eve has a very different recollection of what actually went down during the gifting process. Hannah seems to have grown a little bit suspicious of Simon's actions, and so she decided to dress up like Eve, who Simon was having an affair with. Simon obviously couldn't tell the difference because they're identical, and Simon also brought a gift for Eve, an identical mirror to the one that he had given to Hannah for her birthday earlier. Kinda relevant because it was super difficult to make, as he said, and apparently he valued this woman as much as his wife. A fight breaks out between the two of them, resulting in Hannah getting a bruise on her face and her slashing his throat open with a broken piece of the mirror. We get a little bit of a development outside of that plot where we learn that the midwife that delivered Hannah also delivered Eve as the other half of the twins. But seeing as the parents only wanted one baby, Florence ended up taking in Eve and raising her as her own, which explains why Eve and Hannah look a lot alike. Anyway, back to the big, end story reveal that we were getting before, we see that Hannah and Eve look at each other with the body of Simon with his throat slashed open, and immediately they make the decision that what's best for them is to worry about the baby, so they hide the body down in the basement and flee to Glasgow to give some reasonable doubt that they were nowhere near Simon when he was killed. Eve even says that this seems like it would be a good alibi, so this seems like the real story. Immediately after that big scene reveal, we get a chat message from a detective asking us if we've reviewed all the footage and if we're ready to leave. I was a little bit concerned I was going to have a quiz when I chose to leave, so we're going to look around a little bit longer. We continue typing in more words and watching more clips as we earn the achievement Detective Sergeant for viewing 50% of the videos in the database. You know you're really starting to get desperate in the mystery game where you just start searching numbers and seeing if maybe there's something that you missed. A little bit of the story that we actually missed out on was apparently Hannah told Simon that this sister that Simon never knew about had become pregnant. And from that, Simon was able to figure out what had happened because obviously he knew that he was sleeping with two women that looked identical. So that's kind of how things ended up getting figured out and out in the open. Another storyline that was in the periphery but I had never really fully clicked into was Hannah talking about how she had a miscarriage, and very shortly after that, both of her parents passed away in their bed after consuming some bad mushrooms, which kind of seems like it might have been the breaking and start point of this whole situation. It seems kind of random, but there's also a clip where Eve spills coffee on herself where we earn the achievement Spilt Coffee. Kind of in the fennel camp for weird little video clips that have achievements attached. Shortly after that, we also earn the achievement Detective Inspector for viewing 75% of the database videos, but again, at this point we've seen most of the story stuff, really. This game actually had me really taking notes trying to figure out which scenes were Hannah and which scenes were Eve, and part of that was also me writing down a list of words that were mentioned in various clips that I thought might be worth searching for, so I go down the list and just randomly plug things in and find a couple videos that I haven't seen here and there. Once I've fully exhausted my list of words that I was keeping, I get to a point where we're only missing a couple different video clips, and it seems like the majority of them come immediately after the section with the lie detector test. I just can't seem to hit any words that will get me in there though, so I think maybe we'll come back in the post game and try to figure this out. So I go ahead and reopen the chat with the detective when we get a very shocking message. So you think you understand why your mother did what she did, which is very shocking. This entire time I've kind of been playing under the assumption that once I got to this point at the end, I was gonna be quizzed on which woman was which and why everything went down the way it did. But I definitely wasn't expecting the detective to call me Sarah and ask for me to log out. So that's confirmation that this woman is our mother. Or maybe both women are our mother? I'm pretty sure it's just one woman, and even the tattoo thing is just to throw us off. But anyway, regardless of all of that, that takes us to the credits, but we still have a couple more achievements to earn. We also earn the achievement The Reflection for logging out. Also, shout out to watching credits all the way through, as we see that the detective has given us a little bit of a hint in using some admin cheat codes in the database. Our first move upon logging back into the system is to type admin_unlock, which earns us the achievement More Than a Guest and allows us to see up to 15 different video entries when we hit more in a search term. Super useful for skimming through videos we haven't found yet. And another super useful feature is typing in admin_random, which earns us the achievement Lucky Dip and also shows us a random video clip, which seems to have some preferred weighting towards clips that we haven't seen yet, which is obviously super useful. You definitely won't catch me complaining about doing the admin_random though, because it turns out a lot of the video clips that I was missing, specifically from the lie detector, are actually one-word yes or no answers that I couldn't have found because they weren't going to show up on my search results. Once we admin random our way through our last couple remaining videos, we earn the achievement Detective Chief Inspector for inspecting 100% of the database. And finally, with the database all handled, we need to return to the mirror game, but instead of winning with either of the colors, we actually need to result in a perfect draw. I definitely followed a guide for this because it seemed super difficult to do with not following a guide, but anyway, we do it, earn the achievement Score Draw, and we can officially say that we have done everything in Her Story. But how did we do? Her Story took me a total of 3.3 hours, and I've gotta say, I really did enjoy this game quite a bit. I remember this game getting pretty good buzz back in 2015 when it came out, but I wasn't really playing games like this at the time, so it makes sense that I gave it a skip, but I'm definitely glad that I've checked it out now. That being said, I don't know if this style of game is super great for the kinds of videos that I make. It was essentially me watching video clips and then describing what the people in those video clips were saying, so I don't know, maybe if you guys really like this, we can do more. There's at least one or two other FMV games that I'd like to check out, but maybe that's not something that's right for the channel. Overall, I thought the story was super interesting. Even coming to the end, I wasn't 100% sure if this was one woman or two. It seems like the most likely situation is the woman had the combination of the miscarriage and both of her parents dying at once, which resulted in some psychological issues and this sort of split personality coming out that resulted in all of these confusing messages that we were receiving, with Eve being more open with the police and Hannah trying to hide things. There was also a clip that I didn't include in the video where the detective seemed to be confirming that all of the results of Eve's lie detector test were accurate except for her name where she called herself Hannah, which would seem to reinforce that they're the same person and that murder did go down how she suggested. But the thing that was really kind of throwing me off is that definitely in some shots there were a tattoo and in other shots there weren't, but maybe it just wasn't a real tattoo? I'm not sure. But we also know that we're Sarah, so definitely part of the story was true because, I mean, she said Sarah in the video, and obviously this recording was from quite a bit in the past. Also, the disconnected nature of this game maybe made it a little bit worse for a video as well. I played this all in one sitting, and that kind of seems like the only way to play this game IMO. I definitely would have gotten way too confused if I took a break anywhere in here. But as always, please feel free to let me know what you think down in the comments section below, and you can feel free to suggest any other games that you'd like to see me check out as well. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.
I left the next day, Saturday.